Okay, well, look, it's 4:05, and I know people will probably keep joining, but I think we should kick off. So I'm going to start and formally open the first Roots and Shoots Resource Box webinar, and welcome everybody. My name's James Forbes. I'm the CEO of the Jane Goodall Institute Australia, and I'd really love to start today with an acknowledgement of country, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present. Where I sit is on Gadigal country in the Eora Nation in Sydney, and I pay my respects to elders past and present, and of course for everyone where you are, paying our respects to your elders past, present and emerging. So thank you so much for everyone for joining and coming on board today. It's very exciting for us, really very exciting. And I just want to start by I'm going to be sharing my screen and taking everyone through today. But before I do that, I'd like to introduce you to the two people who are with us today as our very special guests, who are going to be running through the bulk of today's webinar. And we've got Angela Colliver, who's been working as our program lead and has an extensive background in the education system, and Mark Kohler, who's at the University of Adelaide in the child psychology unit, and is helping to develop the research that will be running through this project and weaving its way through. So what I'd like to do is just quickly hand to Angela to introduce yourself and just give a bit of a background, Angela, if you could, for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, James. Well, some of you I know, so you may know me as well. Formerly, I managed the Australian Sustainable Schools Initiative, and that was, of course, an Australian program across all states and territories. And also I devised a climate science program called Carbon Kids. So Sue Mayer, for example, has been involved in both those programs, and she is an amazing teacher, as I'm sure many of you are. So I am a teacher by background, and I write educational resources for schools, and thoroughly have enjoyed working with the Jane Goodall Institute here in Australia.
Thanks, Angela. And Mark, if you could just give us a little bit of an intro and background on you.
Thanks, James. Hi, everyone. So I'm Mark, as James has already introduced, and I'm based at the University of Adelaide. My research is more around child development and the factors that affect this. So things like sleep, physical activity, diet, traditionally, and in more recent times, I've become very interested in the role that nature-based learning and interaction with nature can play in child development. So my role in the whole project is really to look after the monitoring of the program, and to ensure that it's really embedded in a solid sort of science basis.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. And we will get going. Okay, fantastic. We've done all that. So the purpose of today is to guide you through the Jane Goodall Institute Australia's newest program and this resource box. And what I'd really love to do is to just give you a little bit of background on the Jane Goodall Institute. I'm assuming most of you know who Jane is, and her background. Obviously, this year it's 60 years since 26-year-old Jane Goodall arrived into Gombe Stream National Park in Tanzania to start researching chimpanzees. And, you know, it was a pretty extraordinary endeavour for someone so young to head off into the jungles in Africa and start working on the study of chimpanzees. And of course, her research was groundbreaking. It basically led to the redefinition of human beings, because her research led her to understand that humans are not the only species that make and modify tools. And that was what was so significant about Jane's work at that time in the 1960s. And in fact, it caused a huge uproar and stink at the time from various sectors of the community. And, you know, you'd probably in modern context on Twitter, it'd be described as a bit of a pile-on. But of course, since then, Jane has, her work has been ratified and endorsed over and over again. And of course, we know this, there's more than just chimps that make and modify tools. There are many species that in fact do. And so she continued her work through into the 80s in Tanzania. And beyond that, then she set up the Jane Goodall Institute in 1977. We now have 26 offices around the world, with the Roots and Shoots program running in about 50 countries. So we have Roots and Shoots, because it's a grassroots program, operating in more countries than we actually have Jane Goodall Institute offices. So the Jane Goodall Institute Australia got kicked off in 2007, and we started literally with one volunteer CEO. Today we've got 7 staff members and about 30 regular volunteers that run the organisation. And in that time, we've been developing not just our support of the Africa programs, which includes the Gombe research that Jane started in the 60s. It includes the Chimpunga Sanctuary in the Republic of Congo, which gives sanctuary to orphaned and injured chimps in the bushmeat and illegal wildlife trade. But we also have a wonderful girls empowerment program in Uganda that teaches young girls about family planning, keeps them in schools, and reduces that impact on forest resources that then knocks on to how successful chimps can be in the wild. So that's our Africa programs. And then of course, Roots and Shoots has just been growing and growing in Australia. And of course, as I mentioned before, it's present in many countries around the world. But here, what we've been doing is slowly developing our ability to get out and into the school communities and bring resources that we hope are really going to resonate with people. And that's Jane's mission. Her mission is to really inspire young people with the tools and the motivation to get out there and make things happen for themselves. She really wants to empower young people to have them, you know, a sense of agency and a sense of resilience about what they do in the world. And that's what Roots and Shoots is essentially all about. So how this project came about is we had a philanthropic foundation that's based in Melbourne who we started talking to, and they were really interested in this idea of a resource box. We partnered with Stuart McPherson, who's a UK geographer who'd sent out a similar box in the UK to great success. And this foundation said, well, we'd love to do this here in Australia. So this has all been philanthropically funded. It means the resources are completely free for you guys, which is just fantastic. And we're hoping that we'll be able to do this again next year and into the following year as well. And we want to build that into secondary school as well as high school, as well as primary school. So very exciting. It's a huge growth phase for the Jane Goodall Institute. We're a pretty small organisation, but this is sort of certainly taking us on a bigger pathway. So hopefully that gives you all a bit of more understanding about the Jane Goodall Institute, what we do, how we do it, and how this program came about. So what I'd like to do now is to pass to Angela, who's going to run through the overview of the program. Just before I do that, I've just forgotten a couple of things just around some housekeeping and apologies. In the chat, we'll have Gemma monitoring questions and comments. And I know during Angela's section, she'll really be looking at the chat. And if questions come up, I think she wants this to be a very interactive session. There will be a Q&A at the end, but bear in mind, we probably won't be able to, because of time, get to every single question. So what we'll do is we'll post an FAQ document in the chat, which should answer a lot of questions. But if there's questions there not answered by the FAQ, we will be downloading all those questions and we will get round to responding to all of those in due course for you. The last point I just wanted to make, of course, is we are recording this session. So just so everyone's aware that the session is being recorded, and we'll be posting this on the website once that's completed. So without any further ado, I think I've remembered all the housekeeping and I'll pass to Angela. Thanks so much.
Thanks, James. James, I wonder if you could just go back to the previous slide, please, because there are some questions about the box. Now, if you have a look at the previous one with Jane's photo on it, in the background, you'll see copies of our wonderful box, the box and what it looks like. And as you can see, it's beautiful. Someone's asked, are they on their way? to your places yet? Well, they land in Australia tomorrow, would you believe? And then they need to be labelled, and then they will be on their way. So inside this beautiful crate that asks your students to open it immediately, be really gentle, because it's a design that I think will really stand out in your classrooms and engage kids in wanting to have a look at what's inside. Behind that graphic, you can see some book covers. You can see Amazing Australia down beneath, Incredible Earth next to that, What on Earth, and Local Safari. So these are some of the contents. You've also got something else which I'll talk about in just a moment. But Amazing Australia is a hard copy book. And when I've shown my copies to various teachers and librarians, they've been all just struck by awesomeness. They can't believe the quality of the photographs and the information. So it's a lovely literacy-based opportunity for students to investigate and discover the amazing Australian animals and species that we have here. Incredible Earth is more geographical. So this looks at some of the most beautiful geography across the planet. And similarly, and What on Earth, that's a real geological book. And Local Safari is full of environmental education activities for homeschooling, for early childhood, and for primary classes. So you can start with making lovely ochres and painting with them, making mandalas, to actually being able to identify invertebrates and different birds and butterflies, doing some beach combing. So there's something for everyone, whether you're on the coast, whether you're a school that's inland, or even in a remote area, you'll find something for you. Complementing that is a lovely opportunity for you to do some, I guess, sequestration of carbon and some tree planting. There's an opportunity through our Woody Wild program that will really be featured on the PD session number 2 on the 19th of November. There's some information about that in the box as well. And to the very left and the right of Jane, of course, are the learning sequences that I've developed to complement the Australian curriculum and the NISA syllabus, in addition to the Victorian and the Western Australian modifications to the Australian curriculum. So you'll find 2 learning sequences for reception or K to 2, 2 for year 3, 4, and 2 to 5, 6. And each of those involves students in the discover phase of the solution fluency using these lovely resources in the box. And each of the learning sequences really works towards designing a solution. It could be a local solution, it could be a solution for animals, a solution for, of course, ourselves as a society, and of course for our precious environment. Okay, James, now we can go to the wordy one. So when you see this box arrive in your school, it could go to the front office, so the office manager might have to sign off on it. It might come directly to your classroom. It will come to every home if you're a homeschooler. And of course, if you're a early childhood centre or an environmental education centre, it will come to your front office. There will be a sign off for it so that we know and we can track that it actually has arrived, and it will be there with you. Now the program. The program really has a number of focus areas. The first one is the curriculum offerings that we have briefly talked about in those learning sequences. And it's also about protecting the biodiversity of either your school grounds, or local area, or your home garden. And this is where Mark's research will come into play, because it's about connecting the kids you work with nature. So the biodiversity protection and improvement can be something that is important to your school. I know Sue Mayo, for example, they created a lizard lounge recently. They had some trees come down in a storm, and the kids lobbied the leadership team not to let them be taken away and to be mulched into bark chips, but rather to be upcycled and used in their Jane Goodall Roots and Shoots project. And their lizard lounge was, I guess, their design for a habitat that suited their school. So that's the sort of thing you might be considering when you're thinking about biodiversity protection and improvement. It could be a food garden. It could be a koala corridor. If you're on the coast, you might do something with the sand dunes and protecting some of the erosion that could be occurring there. So a re-veg project. I recently visited Kumanjuk Area School, and they've actually engaged, I guess, used the Jane Goodall program to design a bird migration program. So they've established small habitats and bird boxes so that the species that fly through their corridor have somewhere that they can be protected from wind and hail and predators. So that's something, again, that we invite you to design so it's locally relevant and meaningful. The third element of the program is where we really want to excite you and get you involved in educating your community. You all do that very well through your school newsletters, through performances. It could be sharing your projects with a local elderly, an aged care facility. It could be with a kindergarten, or just with your mums and dads. That's the sort of thing we would like to see. Use your social media, create wiki spaces, Moodles. Again, we would like you to design what's relevant to your context. What we'd like you to do in this program is design something that's exciting and motivating for your kids. That's really the key. We support you with, thanks Jane, the next one, an action plan. Now this action plan enables you, but also the Jane Goodall Institute, to appreciate where you're all planning to go. So during the months now of November and December, we'd like to invite you to complete the action plan, and we're going to send you some links to that. You can see the web link at the bottom that's on the Roots and Shoots website. It's not a big onerous job. And if you'd like some help with that, you can always email me and I'll help you with in any way I can. This action plan also will enable the Institute to go back to the Phillips Foundation, who are our supporters and our partners, and enable them to understand the diversity and the breadth of what is being developed in our program. So it has a range of purposes, one for you that you can go to your leadership team and say, this is where we're going, one for what you might communicate with your parent community, your parents and friends group, but it also helps us. So we really do look forward, and I am excited because they always gave me such opportunities to engage with the people that, you know, getting involved. So if there are any questions around action plan, I'm happy to answer those. When you're thinking through just the planning, you might just say in November, you're going to read through the learning sequences and get the kids excited and delving into the books. And then for the implementation, you might say in 2021, we're actually going to implement this specific learning sequence, and our goal is to achieve X. With the management of the school grounds, once again, this term you might sit down with the principal and the leadership team and plan for what could be established that's meaningful. And then in 2021, start to propagate the trees or start to actually do a design in design folios of the project that your class or your school has envisaged. And that's the same with education for the community. Start some planning of how you might educate mums and dads, get media involved, and then think forward for the implementation in 2021. Next slide, please, James. There is one tool that I really invite you to share with anyone in your school community right now. This one pager called a program logic. It steps out the big picture. So at the bottom, we're at stage 1. You've all registered. And now part 2, you're in session 1 of a professional learning session to gain an understanding of what's involved in our program and the support we can provide. And next month rather, on the 19th of November, we'll still be working in this stage 2. And then as you can see, the planning and the implementation occurs. When the program logic changes to the light green, that's where we're starting to get into deeper levels. But I imagine that's where we'll be about June, July, August of next year. But ultimately, the really big picture is for some systemic change. If you look at the blue box, we want our communities to be optimistic about a future where we're all working with nature as creative powerhouses of solutions. So that's what we're really striving towards. Once again, if you have any questions around this one pager, I'm happy to answer them. So the bottom and the orange, they're your short-term goals. The green is where we're going towards implementation. But really what James, Mark, myself and the entire Jane Goodall Institute team are hoping for is where we're all positive about a future, where we're working with nature as real creative powerhouses and developing solutions. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Angela. And now I might pass over to Mark to run through our research. Thanks, Mark.
Great. Thanks, James. Hi again, everyone. As a partner of the project, the University of Adelaide, and my role is to assist in the development of the resource box program, which we've done and will continue to do, and to ensure that it has a strong scientific basis. But just as important as that is to assess the effectiveness of the program in achieving its core aims. And those core aims are improving child wellbeing and resilience, as James and Angela have both touched on, increasing school engagement, and promoting a child connectedness to nature. And we think they're all important, and hopefully you're already sort of getting a sense of how that's important, and hopefully through this process we'll have a greater awareness of that. Now, your role as a teacher, in what capacity that might be, is fundamental to this program and to this process. So by assisting us in implementing these programs in all these class activities and facilitating children completing not just the activities, but a survey both before and then after the activities being conducted, you're, if you like, our resident scientists. So you're helping us conduct what is actually an enormous feat of citizen science. And through that, we will be able to monitor the effectiveness of the program, and we'll also be able to be informed on how to tailor and improve the program moving forward as well, so that we can better meet those core aims that I mentioned. So I'll just be spending a few minutes outlining at a very sort of brief and broad level the research basis for the program. What are some of the core drivers? And then overviewing what that survey involves. Okay, so the scientific basis, if you like. So on the next slide, there's a picture of a child, and I'll explain why that's there. The scientific basis for the program rests on evidence, firstly, for the way learning in nature connects us to the environment. And secondly, for the way engagement with nature benefits the child more broadly, benefits well-being and benefits learning. Okay, so let's start with regarding the connection to nature. So a deep-seated connectedness to nature is strongly related to a direct physical interaction with nature during childhood, and particularly for activities that are thought-provoking and challenging. And that's why we're really excited about this, this nature learning-based approach, or learning in nature approach, or the combination of those two things. Also, this connectedness promotes a set of values and beliefs in children that facilitates pro-environmental choices and behaviour, and that's fairly well documented now. And we also can see that that effect is quite enduring, even through to adulthood. Very specifically, children who have spent more time in nature feel greater empathy with living creatures and the natural world. They have a better ability to link ecological resources with products that they use in their daily life, understanding the impact that that has. And also, they're better at identifying polluted environments as something being bad, if you like, or negative, and clean environments or clean nature as a good thing. So early nature experience shapes attitudes towards nature and connectedness to the natural environment. And this also suggests that the nature connectedness has a role to play in a transgenerational establishment, if you like, of sustainable futures. So that's on the next slide. Very briefly, this simply depicts that the impact of early nature engagement is remarkably stable. So beyond the impact to children in the present moment, which is what we're sort of focusing on with this program, is the fact that children grow, they become our leaders and they're our parents of the next generation, and typically they transfer their own set of values and practices to their children. So we're excited about that potential broader, longer, bigger impact that something like this program can facilitate. And then on the next slide, change is not only evident in the children over the short term and into their longer term, but it shows a transfer effect to other family members and the community around that child. So we can see from research that's been done elsewhere that families of children engaged in nature education programs demonstrate greater environmental knowledge change and conservation behaviour themselves. And so this effect is, while we're monitoring the immediate effect of on the child over the course of the program, we also understanding that this effect probably goes much more broader and wider, and that's exciting. Okay, so that's the nature connectedness bit. And the other part is this next slide here, where we've got a child surrounded by a range of good things. And this is essentially symbolizing the impact of nature connectedness on health and well-being in children. Okay, so engagement with nature has multiple reported physical, mental, and social benefits. We know that in adults, the likelihood of reporting good health or high well-being becomes significantly greater after we've been in contact with nature for at least 2 hours or more a week. That's to reduce it down to a quantity. Now, for children, there's a range of benefits. We know that it improves physical fitness and reduces obesity. And that might be quite an intuitive effect, but it is something that's documented, something that's a significant impact of time in nature. It improves social skills. So activity in nature allows children to develop their teamwork skills, their social abilities, levels of confidence, and also to help them express emotions and negotiate emotions with their peers. We've also seen increases in academic achievement and reductions in the symptoms of various behavioural learning problems in children. So children accessing nature during school have shown improved focus and competence in their academic work. We've also seen, the research has shown reduced symptoms of ADHD amongst children, and also just more broadly increased academic engagement and achievement. There's a reduction in stress. So the presence of more nature in a child's life is associated with lower psychological stress in children. And that's even after controlling for socioeconomic differences and differences in the sort of immediate access to nature. It also plays a buffering effect on stress. And so by definition, what we're talking about there is it's improving resilience. And that kind of leads to the final point that nature connectedness or engagement with nature increases mental resilience. So green space is a good predictor of emotional resilience in young children. And children growing up with a greater urban residential green space have a lower risk of psychiatric disorders in childhood, but also in adolescence and adulthood. And that kind of feeds on into the point I was making earlier about the stability and the longevity of these effects. Interestingly, the effects are not as enduring. Research is emerging to show not as enduring when this engagement has happened or only happens later on. So as an adolescent or particularly as an adult. So this early engagement with nature seems to be quite fundamental in setting up these benefits. And again, these effects were also shown after controlling for things like socioeconomic differences, family histories of mental illness, etc. So that's kind of an overview, if you like, of the sort of the research that's backing up what we're doing and why we're doing it. On the next, on my final slide here, I just wanted to provide you with a little bit of information about that monitoring process I mentioned, which is survey-based. So we have a survey that children will complete, and I've worked hard with another organisation and my colleagues at Resilient Youth Australia to develop surveys that are age appropriate and in a platform that is also appropriate for children to complete. So there's an upper primary version and a lower primary version. In the upper primary version, there's some free text options as well, but it's predominantly sort of, click on the screen, sort of multiple choice and icons that they can click on. And this survey or these surveys assess those domains we're interested in. So school engagement, mental well-being, and resilience. So now the access is through a simple link that we'll provide. And so we're sort of generating all these codes at the moment, and you will get for each school or each setting will get 5 codes. Now you might not need to use all those codes. This will all be explained to you in the information, but just very briefly, you'll get 1 code for upper primary and 1 code for lower primary, and that's for the immediate survey, the survey that you complete before you've implemented the programs that Angela has described. Then you get another pair of codes, 1 for upper primary, 1 for lower primary, that we want you to try and have the children complete around 3 weeks after you have finished your primary activity that you've planned out and conducted. And that will allow us to look at the associations early on, and then also any change that occurs over time, in part due to the program that you've implemented. Now, there's a fifth code. That fifth code is for you as the teacher, and in that's an important part because we want to know and to build into, if you like, our modelling, your own thoughts on nature. But predominantly, that's important to us because you will provide us with some information on the types of materials and the parts of the program that you implemented and that you engaged with. So that's going to be really critical information for us. And it will also, there's also a few questions in there just on the actual natural environment that you're in. So, you know, the sorts of resources that your school actually has access to. They'll all be important variables, if you like, to control for when we're really teasing apart the impact of this type of program. Okay, so that's how we predominantly monitor and evaluate the program. It's a really vital part of the success of the program, and it's going to tell us a lot about the beneficial use of nature in the curriculum. And you are absolutely central to that process and to its success. So I'm so glad that you've joined us today, and that really gives us some hope that that you're going to engage with it and that it's really going to be maximised to its full benefit. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm happy to take questions through the means that have been mentioned. You can also look me up at the University of Adelaide, and I'm happy for you to contact me directly about the program if you want to discuss some of these research aspects in more detail that are not necessarily pertinent to actually rolling out or operating the program itself. But thank you.
Great, thank you, Mark. That was really illuminating and fantastic, and I hope everyone got a lot out of that, both Angela's overview of the program and obviously Mark's description of the research that we're proposing through the program. So now we've got some time, in fact, to answer your questions. So I'm sure there are a lot that you've got, and if you'd like to pop your questions in the chat, what we can do is answer those.
There's one for Mark there at the moment from Susanna. Does every teacher in the school complete the survey?
Thanks, Susanna. No, it's just the teacher who is completing the program with their class. So if it's just one teacher, then it's only for that teacher. If there are multiple teachers in the school who are implementing a program, then we would like responses from those teachers as well. Yeah.
I'm hoping for a whole school approach.
Fantastic. We had an earlier question as well, I think from Mark, about whether or not it aligns with the New South Wales syllabus. So Angela, perhaps you want to just talk generally about how the program aligns with all states and territories.
Certainly. In, I guess, New South Wales, it aligns with the Science and Technologies K-6 syllabus primarily, but also to the general capabilities and the sustainability cross-curriculum priority. Similarly, with the Australian curriculum and the modifications that have been undertaken in Victoria and in Western Australia, we've embraced all of those. So the curriculum links are quite extensive. There will be no work that you have to do at all. So when we've used the amazing books, Amazing Australia, etc., we've also got some English outcomes, not only links to the literacy capability, general capability. And when we've delved into geography or more broadly into mathematics, they are all there for you as well. So I guess our challenge to you is download some of the learning sequences, and thank you, Gemma, for providing the link in the chat box, and give them a go and check out the curriculum links.
So Darren's asked a question about, does this need to be done in this term, or can it be done in term 1 next year, Angela?
Term 1 next year. I'd suggest you all already have your plans for this term. Start planning though, talking to your leadership team, and if you've got some composite classes and some of the kids will be with you, get them involved. Sue's got a gardening club, and of course that will remain the gardening club for next year as well. Make it locally relevant, start thinking, and the excitement really begins in terms of real action projects when you're ready.
Fantastic. And Cheryl had a question about, do you have some ideas of how this could work in the wider community? I think, you know, I can answer that, Cheryl, in part in the sense that one of the things that we'd love out of the Resource Box program is for people to set up Roots and Shoots groups. Now, you can do that within the school, but Roots and Shoots doesn't have to be limited to the school gate. It can be outside in the broader community. So there may be some parents and teachers and kids who would like to set up a Roots and Shoots group in their local community that's outside the school and address a particular environmental challenge or issue that's really important to them. The key thing about Roots and Shoots is it's really about empowering people to take the power into their own hands, make decisions about what things they wish to address and make that happen. And we can actually support that through our Roots and Shoots resource kit, which becomes available to you as a Roots and Shoots member. And it's a beautiful 32-page kit, which is like a how to make change happen in your community. And you can download that from the website once you become a member. So that's how it can work in the wider community.
I also suggest, from my experience with the Australian Sustainable Schools Initiative, to start thinking about some of the, I guess, local businesses that you can see some synergies with, and they might like kids might like to start writing to them about your involvement and getting some donations of gardening equipment, plants, seedlings, seeds, whatever you're thinking of. But I know by embracing sort of that enterprise education and going beyond the school fence, writing to your council, magic happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, just having a look here.
Sue's also talked about the agencies to engage for Indigenous content. Now, in the science area, many of you will know that we've actually now broadened all those content descriptions to include Indigenous knowledge. So if that's of importance to your community, we'd love Indigenous elders to become involved in designing what your project might be.
Absolutely. And there's a question here about where the boxes are up to, and I know Angela made mention of it. So they're literally in the warehouse, which is fantastic. And tomorrow there's a small group of very passionate Jane Goodall volunteers that will be going out and literally we'll be labelling those boxes ourselves, and then they'll get collected and distributed. So hopefully they'll be to some of you next week, but it could be you know, upwards of 2 weeks, depending on how the transportation system, which, as we all know through COVID, has been challenging in so many ways. And for us, it's been frustrating because the container ship was delayed because of COVID in Singapore, and then of course we had some industrial action at Port Botany, which also held things up. So we're really sorry about the delays, but we felt that it was important that we just went ahead with this webinar because at least you'll get a good introduction and get a chance to ask questions and be ready for the box when it does arrive.
On the box itself also, it's not going to be delivered by Australia Post. We've got a group, a new company called Sendall, that is 100% carbon offset, undertaking our distribution activities. So don't look for an Australia Post van. It's going to be something like a courier that will come to your office, your home, and you'll sign for having received the box.
James, I've just noticed a question on the Q&A forum.
Yes.
Basically, it just says we whole school sustainability focus in term 2 next year. Do we have to stick to a timeline?
No, this is, once again, your project. We are here to support you, and you can use these resources, as I said, in your English classes, your literacy, your library lessons initially, until that term 2 where the sustainability focus takes place. There's no one way to do this. This is your project and we want to work with you.
Fantastic.
Yes, now, Louise, our December webinar is one that's exactly doing what you've asked here. You've said it would be great to have some kind of event where all students involved get together to discuss their projects with each other. Is anything like this planned in the future? Well, firstly, December is for you as an educator to talk to everyone else and excite us about what you've got planned for next year. But yes, I think something like a Future Leaders Congress where we have our Roots and Shoots teams talking with one another, using, if it's going to be a Moodle or a Wiki or Google Docs, and then coming together in something like this would be amazing. And Jane would be so excited to join in, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a great question, Louise, and I know that you know, Jane Goodall herself, she's been holed up in Bournemouth in England, and you may be aware that she travels about 300 days of the year normally, but yet she's never worked so hard as in this pandemic, because she literally does not stop. But she's become something of a master of video technology, probably run rings around all of us, and at 86, that's a pretty remarkable feat. But I think, to echo Angela's point, Jane would love to join an event like that, because there's nothing she loves more than listening to what kids have planned and how they want to solve the problems that are coming down the pipeline. So I think it's a great idea, and we'd love to facilitate that. So yes, obviously through the webinar, but next year to be able to actually get Jane herself involved, and as the projects proceed, get them to share that with her would be a fantastic thing to do, and we will absolutely look at that.
Fully support that. And Gemma's talked about also perhaps a Facebook group, so that students along the way can start communicating with one another. So we have all of these suggestions in mind, but it's really, once again, we want to work with you. We don't want to impose any more work on you. So I'm just excited that you're all thinking similar lines.
Yes, and Abby, who's our Roots and Shoots General Manager, has made a really good point about that you can, you know, register as a Roots and Shoots group on our website, and we can assist and follow your progress. And then there's also the, you know, a reward of a certificate at the end. But we also promote Roots and Shoots projects on our blog, out through social media, really celebrating what kids are doing out in the community. And that may also give some of them access to things like our mini grants program, where we have some philanthropic funders that provide not a huge amount of money, but enables us to offer grants of about $250 to $500 for outstanding projects. And in those instances, it's not even just about the money. It's sometimes we get kids that have put up a project and then maybe they're not successful. They'll make them happen anyway, or that they'll use that money and leverage money from, say, the local council or another group. And by the time they've done all that, they've got something quite extraordinary about that. But yeah, it's a great way to make it all happen. Abby, if you'd like to say a few words, I'm happy for you to.
Okay. She says she thinks we have it covered. So we've got 10 more minutes. So is there anything else you'd like us to cover off on? Or do you have any more questions? Or maybe we could hear from Sue Mayo, who has begun her journey with her gardening club, and hear what she's been up to. Is that possible, Gemma?
Sorry, I'm going to unmute myself. Yep, so Sue, I've given you permission to talk if you did want to share a few words, because I know you've done some incredible work with the box already. Or you can type it and we can read it as well.
It tells her she's not connected. So Sue, there's a little microphone just at the bottom left-hand corner that's got a red stripe through it, or if it's green, it means you can just talk. Yes, Fiona, there is definitely a copy of the recording. And I must let you all know that if you're a New South Wales teacher, I'm NISA accredited, and we'll also be providing you a link shortly to where you can place your name, your school, and your NISA ID number, so that I can put it into the NISA portal. If you're from another state and territory, we're also going to acknowledge your attendance with a certificate and highlighting which standards for the Australian Professional Standards of Teachers has been covered and how long you've been with us. So it would be an hour and a half. And then that can be taken to your teacher organisation if it's TQI, or if it's your registration board to verify the professional learning that you've undertaken today. And that will happen next month as well, and the months to come.
I think Jem has promoted Sue to being a panelist. So I don't know if Sue, if you're able to speak.
Come on, Sue Mayo.
It might be a bit of a technological bug.
No worries. That's okay.
Next time.
Next time.
Absolutely, definitely.
So look, perhaps Angela, you'd just like to talk about the next professional development session?
Yes, the next PD session is same time, same place. You'll receive a link to a Zoom video conference. And this time we're actually looking at going deeper into the project, in particular with a re-veg focus, looking at how you might plan to sequester some carbon or to get involved in the Woody Wild program. Now, Woody Wild is an initiative. It's a fundraising activity. Instead of having chocolates in your school to raise money for an organisation or for your school, this involves trees. So in the box, when it arrives, there's an A4 information brochure that tells you all about this. The beautiful thing about Woody Wild is that we're actually doing everything that Jane Goodall is all about. We're establishing new habitat, we're revegetating, we're preventing soil erosion and connecting kids with nature. So that's going to be, I think, an exciting opportunity for you to hear from Gary, who's one of our partners in this program. By then, I imagine we also will have some action plans. So I'm looking forward to supporting those teachers who have developed an action plan between now and mid-November to have a little voice and become a panelist and just give us some of the tips and the ideas that you're thinking and working towards. So Gemma has now put the link to the Google Doc where you can put in your NISA ID number. But for everyone else who's participated today, if you can just enter your details without the NISA ID, then I can assure you we'll create that certificate of attendance that you can then take to your TQI or teacher registration board and have these hours accredited.
Awesome. And there's just a comment there from Loretta about not receiving a link about today's Zoom. Look, thank you, Loretta. We've had one or two little technical hiccups with this first one, but I think we'll have those ironed out for the second one, and appreciate everyone's patience with that. And actually, that's a good segue into thanking the University of Adelaide, who actually have provided the webinar program Technology Today for us to have this webinar. Thank you, Mark, and to all the team at the University of Adelaide who got onto it today in no uncertain terms. But yes, for those people that were a little bit uncertain about where the link was coming from, we will have it well sorted by the next one. So apologies for the last minute nature, but we'll get it sorted for the next time for sure.
I hope you will be receiving your newsletters, because that's another really important way to stay up to date. Gemma does a great job with our newsletters, and we're very excited that we're actually launching the Jane Goodall Institute's resource box on the 16th of November. So hopefully some media coverage will be there that you can leverage off, take to your principal and share in the school newsletter as well, and highlight to everyone that you're part of this amazing initiative.
Yes, well, that's a really good point, Angela, and and one of the things that we should let you know is that Jane herself will be attending that launch on the 16th of November. So we'll be promoting that out through our newsletter, and you'll be able to register to attend two stages of the event. One is there's the Savannah enclosure at Taronga Zoo, where you'll get a virtual tour of that enclosure, and then Jane will be joining us from the UK. To officially launch the box on the 16th of November. So we'll send out the information in the newsletter, and you'll be able to register for those.
And Gemma, could you let everyone know how they receive their newsletter? Louise has just asked, how do I get the newsletter?
Yeah, there's been a sort of flurry of questions just coming through.
You must be really talking about it. Run around.
But in terms of the newsletter, we try and send it monthly. It's been more like 6 weeks this time. So everyone that's registered for the box. So if you only registered in the last sort of 6 weeks, you might not have had one yet, but there'll be one tomorrow with the video for this and lots of other updates, and then we'll be getting them out. Yeah, it'll be kind of mid-month from then, with all the exciting stuff that's going on. And yeah, sorry we didn't have any boxes to show today. They're not with us yet, but they are stunning. So it's going to be amazing to see them.
Also, can I just add, even if you just watch the recording, not just, if you watch the recording, that's still, you are still registered for the PD. So please, you utilise the Google Docs form, put in your name and school and your whatever ID number, and we will send you a certificate of attendance.
Awesome. Well, I think that might be it for today, and really appreciate everyone joining us, and thank you for your passion and interest in the program. And I'd like to thank Angela and Mark and Gemma for all the work they've done today, both presenting and also Gemma managing the loveliness that is technology and doing all that back-end work. It's always a joy, isn't it? And I know we all have our various struggles with that from time to time. So we appreciate your patience with that. And as I say, if you want to ask us any questions afterwards, info@janegoodall.org.au, info@janegoodall.org.au, and please feel free to write any questions you'd like in relation to today, or more broadly about the box, or more broadly about the Jane Goodall Institute and the work we do. Thank you so much, and we look forward to your boxes arriving in the next week or two, and we'll see you soon. Okay. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
That was cool.